There is another cool feature when it comes to Vue components, which, once you know it, will give you way more options of structuring your code and splitting your code into multiple components. And that would be the feature of slots. Now, what are slots about? Let me show you an example. In user info, we have this section with a header and a paragraph. In badge list, we also have a section with some content. Now, the content is different, but there is one important thing which both components, badge list and user info, have in common. And that's the section, but actually not just the section, but the section and the styling that's being applied to that section. You might remember in the last lecture, I copied the styling to ensure that the section has the same style in both components. Now, of course, an alternative would have been to simply make section a global style here in app Vue where the style is not scoped. But another alternative would be to create a standalone component which simply contains the section with the attached styling and which then is flexible regarding the content it receives. That could be something like a base card component. Now, the name is up to you, but I'm naming it like this because I want to create a certain look, which is sometimes referred to as a card look in the web. Basically, this look of having a drop shadow and rounded corners, this is often referred to as a card look. And I'm going to create a component here which encapsulates that look so that we can easily reuse it wherever we want. And for that, here in this template, I will add a section like this, or maybe also just use a div to make it a bit more reusable semantically, but that's just a minor thing. It doesn't really matter here. And then I add my styling. And important, I'm going to scope this styling by adding the scoped attribute. Now I'm going to copy over this section styling here to my base card and change it from section to div, of course, because I'm now having a div here. And now I want to make sure that the content in here can be anything we want. I basically just want to use this component as a wrapper with a certain style attached. Now, how could we receive content from outside now, though? Well, we learned about props, right? We can add a script here, like this, and then simply export our default JavaScript object, and now accept some props here. But what would be our props? Would it be content and we then try to output content like this? That actually will not work, because if we now want to use our card here, we can't pass in our HTML content with all those Vue features we're using. Let me show you what the problem is. Let's say we register this globally because we're going to use this card in multiple places. So here in main.js, we're going to register it like this. And then here with the app component, we have our base card like that. And now in user info, I want to use it. So I want to, in the end, wrap my content here with base card like this. I'm not replacing the section with it, but I put my base card into it. And I'm wrapping this content with base card. This is, however, not how props work, do they? If I save that, I now lost all the content because Vue doesn't know where to render this. I added it between the tags of a custom component, and, well, how would you know what to do with that, where to output it? After all, our custom component has its own template. Yes, it has a content prop, but, well, Vue doesn't know what's in there. Now, we could, of course, set content here equal to a string and pass this content here as a string to content, but then this would no longer be able to use Vue features. So that's all not the solution. Instead, it's this slots feature which I mentioned. Vue has a special syntax for this exact scenario where you want to use your own component as a wrapper around dynamic content, so around different kinds of HTML content. And for that, you simply go to your component that should be the wrapper. You don't use props in there, but instead you use a special element, the slot element, like this. And if you now save that, you will see this works and we got the look we want. And if I go to user info, please keep in mind that I deleted the section styling here. So this look is really coming from our card component. And that's how slots work. They allow us to receive HTML content, which also may be using view features, from outside of the component. Basically just like props, but where props are meant to be used for data, which a component needs, slots are meant to be used for HTML code, for the template code a component needs. So here we now just provide a shell with some styling. We could also add some logic if this component needed to, but we then allow the parent component to provide the HTML code that should be inside of that div. And that's the core idea behind slots.